Good evening, and welcome to this edition of Labor Vision. I'm Bob Delaney, Executive Director of the Institute for Labor Studies and Research. Labor Vision, a production of the Institute, focuses on topics of importance and interest to working Rhode Islanders. We hope you enjoy this evening's edition.
Welcome to Labor Vision. I'm Colleen Callahan, Director of Professional Issues at the Rhode Island Federation of Teachers and Health Professionals. This two-part edition of Labor Vision is focused on a labor management collaboration to implement a high-quality evaluation system on teacher evaluation, something required of all districts in Rhode Island, but working a little differently in 6 districts that are involved in the Rhode Island Federation of Teachers and Health Professionals-led Innovation Initiative on Evaluation. In the first part of this series, we brought 2 union presidents and 2 superintendents together with the president of the Rhode Island Federation of Teachers and Health Professionals to talk about the benefits of their labor management collaboration. In this second part of the series, we're going to focus on the challenges they face in implementing this very complex initiative, but how their efforts to work together are really benefiting the work they're doing for teachers, for students, and for their districts. Welcome to Labor Vision. Today's Labor Vision segment is really a part 2 of a discussion that we've been having with state leaders, superintendents, and union presidents about an initiative that they're involved in with the Rhode Island Federation of Teachers and Health Professionals to implement a high-quality teacher evaluation system. At our last discussion, we focused on the benefits of collaboration, and we talked about how this labor management collaborative effort is really helping 6 districts in Rhode Island: Central Falls, Cranston, Pawtucket, Providence, West Warwick, and Woonsocket, implement a required teacher evaluation system in their districts, something that's really not all that easy to do. The union presidents who are with us today spoke last time about the benefits of the collaborative work they're engaged in. And just as we reached the end of our program, they began to talk a little bit about the challenges that they face. And we thought that it was really important to get together again to spend a little bit more time exploring those challenges and the kinds of things that they've done together and through the initiative to work on them, to try to address them, and to share ideas with one another about successful implementation. So this part 2 brings together again some important leaders in this initiative representing all of the 6 districts. We really have brought together our state federation president and 2 union leaders and 2 superintendents. And with me today, Peter Nero, who is the superintendent of schools in Cranston, Sean Doyle, who is the president of the Cranston West Warwick Teachers Alliance, and his superintendent, Ken Sheehan, who is the superintendent of schools in West Warwick, Frank Flynn, who is the president of the Rhode Island Federation of Teachers and Health Professionals, and Liz Larkin, the president of the Cranston Teachers Alliance. I had you and Sean confused since you were not sitting next to your superintendents. During this last session, we, again, as I said earlier, talked about the benefits of the collaboration, and you each talked with us about why you as a superintendent, why you as a union president thought that this was important work. And for the benefit of those people who were not with us last time, I think it's important for us to quickly reiterate the fact that 6 Rhode Island local school districts, in partnership with the Rhode Island Federation of Teachers and Health Professionals, have worked together on a collaborative effort with some funding from the AFT and funding from a U.S. Department of Education grant to develop and now implement a high-quality teacher evaluation system. It's something that's required by the Rhode Island Department of Education of all districts in Rhode Island, and the 6 districts who are in the Innovation Consortium are really doing something pretty unique. And so last time we shared the upside of that work together and the benefits that we think we are accruing because of our work together. And today we're going to focus a little bit on what some of those challenges were. I think, Liz, when we were ending the last segment, we started with you and asked about challenges after you had talked about the benefits of working together on this. So I'm going to come back to you. and ask you to share with us a little bit about some of the challenges that you're facing. Just maybe hit on something that you're finding to be challenging working on the implementation part of this work.
Okay. Well, in the last taping, really, I was being very positive because I felt that we have worked really, really hard to make this a success. And having the support of the innovation groups, we've been able to share and deal with those obstacles that we've come across. One of the biggest obstacles that I feel that we've had to deal with is the pace that everything was rolled out. In any good plan, usually what you do is you make some kind of strategic plan and you have it in segments so that each piece can be digested by the people, because it's such a serious undertaking and so large. And I think that for the larger districts, as we are, it's even more difficult to roll something like this out, because it takes so much time, effort, manpower, hours of administration, and also these people need to be well trained. And so the obstacle that we came across was the fact that it was too much, too fast. We had the new teacher evaluation, we had the SLOs, student learning objectives, we had the PGGs, personal growth goals, and everyone was getting very overwhelmed. And really it was setting people off, and it was a very difficult challenge for them to handle all of these things at once. And what we do is, and especially in our, I can only speak for the innovation groups, we wanted to do what we did well. And so we all worked really, really hard with our I3 coordinators, the superintendents, the executive board that we have in support of our union delegates, and the principals. We all worked really hard to make it a success, but it was not without its difficulties. And people were very frustrated, and it was hard to answer those questions because a lot of the decisions were driven by the Rhode Island Department of Education. So even though we were developing the teacher evaluation model, we were also under constraints from the Rhode Island Department of Education. So we started to have to separate those out for people and say, listen, this is what we have control of, and these are the difficult decisions that are being thrust upon us that we don't have control of. Sure. And so it was very frustrating for people. And the other issue I think that kind of goes along with that is the fact that the commissioner always speaks, and everyone at RIDE always speaks about the fact that it's every teacher every year. But it's really, when you get into the meat of it, it's not every teacher every year, because what's happening is a lot of the support staff and non-content area teachers or non-elementary teachers are not being held to the same pace and doing these, all of the evaluation and all the PGGs and the SLOs. And that's really difficult to explain to your membership as well. It's a very difficult thing because it is inequitable.
So when we think about that, I'm guessing that everybody's feeling a little bit of that pressure of the pace. Is that fair to say?
Yes,
and
very much so.
So it sounds, though, that you've done some things through the collaborative and just in your own district to address that. You mentioned the I3 coordinators.
Right.
I think it's funny, we talk about the all the acronyms, SLOs, student learning objectives, PGGs, professional growth goals. All of those things just in and of themselves are new terms, new targets. I actually met someone that I know you folks from Cranston know, who's involved in the Ocean State Follies, and he told me just yesterday that he thought he could do a whole new routine based on all of the acronyms that we have in terms of the evaluation system. Do you think that your involvement as a president and your work with your superintendent helped at all in at least explaining to people something about this pace or about what was expected of them? I know I've heard from a lot of folks across the state that this was one of the biggest deals, that teachers really couldn't understand why so much was being done so quickly. It wasn't that they didn't want to do this. No. It's not that they didn't want to. In fact, they've asked for new and better quality evaluations. So did your role as a president being involved in this help at all, do you think?
Yes, it did. Actually, I'd like to have the general public know that really, truly, teachers in Rhode Island were delving into a more rigorous teacher evaluation long before Commissioner Gist came. And we were actually in the process through the Rhode Island Federation and health professionals, trying to look at different options for teacher evaluation. And so I think that when we came through this collaborative group, I think what it was that we were both saying the same thing. We were both, no matter what we agreed or disagreed in our sessions and design team, that I think that when we presented it to the district, we were a united front that both believed in it, and we were going to do anything that we could, Peter and I were going to do everything we could to make it work. And I think that that was what made it successful, because our I-3 coordinator was a wonderful support, and originally she was going to be a .5, but then Peter recognized that this is a huge undertaking, and we needed her to be that communication tool with everyone and make sure that we were always on the same page. She gave us great information, she gave the same information, and then we were able to make an educated decision on where the district had to go, because each district has their different needs.
Sure.
So you have to adjust as you go. So, and what was really good that came of that is that it started to reflect in other decisions that we were making, that we were checking with each other on other issues too, because we realized it's not just the teacher evaluation piece, it's the whole piece.
So your collaborative work kind of bled over to other things.
Yes, it did.
It's interesting though, I mean, we're recognizing this challenge of the pace, recognizing that folks really do want a good quality evaluation system, but that by the superintendent and the union president standing together, that you're able to acknowledge the problem and try to work on it.
Yes.
Peter, you were saying something very similar earlier about the capacity issues, and I'm not sure that people understand what's being asked of administrators. It's interesting as a union leader to have spent the last couple of years working so much with administrators and understanding that they have so much on their plate to manage their buildings. Clearly the human capital system and giving good feedback to teachers is an important part of what they do. But that pace and the every teacher every year seems to have been a bit overwhelming. You mentioned that to me. What are your thoughts on that?
A couple things. First of all, it's the time management issue, because it is, very much time consuming. And, we have a lot of first year principals, and they're getting to know their building. We had a lot of first year teachers with first year principals. And there's a lot of mentoring that goes along the way, not just what happens in the classroom, but everything that they do in the course of a school day and a school week. So I have to tell you that my principals were unbelievably stressed out this year. I mean, trying to get the work done in an economy right now where we've limited our resources in our schools, social workers, guidance counselors, and so forth, where the principal has picked up a major portion of those responsibilities. But the biggest issue that I had moving into this, again, as well as the speed in which it was, which we had to implement it, was the fact of the matter, I always felt as though we should have staggered the implementation of this. And let me just say this, and I'll make a sports analogy, that Bill Belichick's a great coach. He will spend some time with Tom Brady, but not as much as with his backups or his novice players. And my principals know they're good teachers, and the ones that they have to spend more time with, which is the one they have to spend less time with, which are the ones that have been, been in their schools for a long period of time, or are excellent teachers. And I felt from the beginning that because we were distributing this equally amongst all our teachers, I should say, even though some of them in the social workers and so forth are not really evaluated in the same way, shape, or form, but they had to spend that much time on every teacher. And again, my issue has been, what about those other things that a principal does during the course of the day? The management by walking around, going into the cafeteria, talking with kids, talking with teachers, spending time trying to nip a problem before it becomes a problem. And that's the issues that we had this year. And I have to tell you, we got emails and letters from parents saying that their principal was not spending the time, and they knew the reason why, that they were spending it on the teacher evaluation. And I think we have to, and maybe that's the pragmatic person that comes out with me, find a healthy balance in between all of that. And since we in Cranston rolled out a model, it was only 13, 14 years ago. Again, this is, I think, a much superior model. But we knew the issues in trying to roll out, and that's why we did it in a staggered method going out in 1999, and we didn't do this time. And I have to tell you, I think I've got a couple of principals who probably retired prematurely this year because of the fact I'm not sure that they want to go through this through another year.
Yeah.
So.
You know, it's interesting, again, very similar to the teachers, what I'm hearing from principals is that there are pieces of this new system that we're implementing that they really like. The fact that they're working with some rigorous standards that they have. I never realized that you folks who are principals, administrators, didn't get the kind of training and pre-service on evaluation that one might have expected, and that this has actually been helpful in terms of sitting down with teachers and giving them really high quality feedback. But again, what you mentioned, needing to get a balance, needing to be able to give everybody some baseline information, maybe over a couple of years, and identify those new teachers or folks who might need a little bit more time. Ken, you are on the work group, or are on the work group that we have with the Department of Education, and I'm at least encouraged, and Peter, I hope you'll be encouraged, that we have proposed, and I think we're close to an agreement on a cyclical process that hopefully after next year we'll be able to implement. And again, it speaks a lot, I think, to the work we've done together, because we have proposed that we identify teachers who are effective and highly effective, that we then put them on maybe a longer program and be able to free up administrators, evaluators, to work with folks who are new to the profession, who need a little bit more guidance. You've identified the fact that you, in your role as superintendent, are feeling some of the same heat that Peter's feeling. You want to add to that a bit?
Yeah, well, it's very interesting because I serve on a number of different boards throughout the state, so I hear from a lot of superintendents, but also a lot of administrators from other districts, including my own. And what I found to be interesting, not over the overwhelming piece of this that they have to do on a day-to-day basis and still do the things that they have done for years and years and years, they're still troubled with that capacity issue. Mm-hmm. How am I going to get to all these people? And as Peter said, you know, you have people who you know that are highly effective, you know what their practice is on a day-to-day basis, and you're saying to yourself, why am I spending time in this classroom? Because that's what I'm supposed to be doing. That's what I'm told I have to do. And everybody gets evaluated every single year. Mm-hmm. But I need to spend time with that first-year teacher, that second-year teacher, and other people. So there's no choice in that now. Mm-hmm. Every teacher, every year. So as you said, we're in the other groups and talking to people saying, that's not really what is going to be effective in our school systems. We've got to recognize that we have to look at everybody. And that's a big controversy right now too, because you have some teachers who are going to be evaluated right now all the time. And those are the content area people and so forth. And like Liz said, those support people, you know, what do they slide under the radar? Mm-hmm. Wait a minute, they're collecting the same paychecks as everybody else. Mm-hmm. And so there's a little bit of a concern with that as, you know, colleagues. Administratively, there is a huge concern, like I said before, with the capacity issue to get the job completed. When I speak to other superintendents, there are other concerns that are creeping up in the model. Yes, we're doing this in such a fast and quick pace. Something of this magnitude really could have been done over a 3-year period of time. Mm-hmm. of implementation, let alone everything else in ed reform going on in Rhode Island at the same time, which is all falls on the teachers and the administrators and people. Right. But at the same time, some of those other superintendents and administrators are saying, okay, what happens a year from now? What happens 2 years from now? Who's going to be trained? Mm-hmm. Who's training the new people? Who's going to be training the new teachers coming into what this system is? The AFT, the innovation money is going to be gone. The race to the top money is going to be gone. How are we going to reach capacity in the training and the professional development mm-hmm. to sustain this evaluation system that's, I think, very valuable, and so don't all the administrators and teachers. Mm-hmm. They like it, but can we sustain it? Can we continue to sustain it without the funds that are going to be necessary? And that's a major, major concern.
Well, you know, we up-fronted the training money. I'm glad we made that decision. I mean, you've each had just about you've had all of your administrators, and yeah. You in West Warwick, you have as well in Cranston, but I know West Warwick has really focused on also training a number of teacher leaders to begin to carry the ball and to help collect evidence and meet colleague to colleague with people. Luckily, I think that's part of our plan to build capacity in each of the local districts. And Frank is sitting here, and the Federation of Teachers has supported that kind of networking among our locals through professional development for a very long time. So I feel good that we're on the road to helping build that capacity. And I also feel good to say that the Department of Education also recognizes that this cyclical process that we're talking about, this somewhat staggered process that we're working together on, will recognize highly effective teachers as well as give you the time and the resources to work on folks who need a little bit more of your time. It doesn't answer the resource question, and I think sometimes we forget, or at least people don't acknowledge, that when we're talking about time, we're talking about training, and the one thing we keep almost neglecting is that in this system, we're talking about an evaluation and support system. So that means that once you've identified someone as in need of some assistance, further professional development, there's got to be resources behind that so that you as a district administrator, and hopefully school committees are watching this and they know and will support us as we move toward that. Sean was, go ahead.
Colleen, but one of the, we look at what some of the concerns are, and that's what we're looking to do right now. But one of the byproducts out of this was, in fact, the establishment and the development of teacher leaders.
Yes.
And without those teacher leaders and without them being part of the process, that actually has made the evaluation process a lot more easier to implement, but also reach the capacity that we need to. But that's a byproduct that really had to be established and to be developed. And a lot of districts are looking at that saying, wow, that's something that would not have happened without this evaluation system and needing that capacity.
But I think to add on to Ken, what he just stated, we have seen people rise to the occasion. It's been wonderful. But I don't want to see them burn out either.
Right.
And they are. They're also getting burnt out. And this is year one. Mm-hmm. So we need to sustain, but we also need to make it doable and and valuable for everyone, not just rushing through everything and saying, oh, everybody's frazzled. Yeah. And I don't want those teacher leaders to say, I'm not going to do that anymore.
And that's a concern. Right. You mentioned administrators possibly retiring early, and as you suggested, some of the few teacher leaders that we identified at the beginning, it's really important that we're tagging additional leaders to step in and help them, which is something that we're working on right now. Again, that's not happening everywhere. And the fact that you and Peter and Sean, you and Ken recognize that together, you two together in each of your districts and our other colleagues, they're making that happen. I mean, think about the number of teachers in West Warwick, Sean, that are stepping up to the plate and really working hand in glove with administrators to support. There have been a lot of things that folks needed some extra explanation and professional development around, student learning objectives, other things like that. I'm sure you found that your folks have been really helpful in that regard.
Well, they truly have, and as Mr. Sheehan stated, we've always known that we've had a lot of leadership within our schools, and this evaluation system provided an opportunity for those people to step forward and really contribute to the process, and at the same time provided the much needed capacity that we sought in the district.
That issue on the student learning objectives piece is one that I know in West Warwick, folks who work in the union's ER&D system that are also now in your professional development system really tried hard to work on in order to help clear up some pretty muddy waters. Earlier you identified that as a challenge with me. Could you talk a little bit about that?
That's been one of the more significant challenges that I've personally tried to reconcile with the evaluation system. And you discussed, when you opened, you talked about the evaluation process as our goal was to identify and create a quality teacher evaluation system. Part of a quality system, in my opinion, is that it is both accurate and fair. And we've spent a lot of time to ensure accuracy and fairness with the components that we've had control over. One of the things that we've tried to do was reduce as much as possible the amount of subjectivity in the process. If we're honest, we know that it's impossible to eliminate subjectivity. It's just impossible. It is. But if you're cognizant that it exists and you're working together, you can identify where you can reduce that subjectivity. One of the frustrating things, it seems that the most subjective part of the entire process is the part that's mandated by the Rhode Island Department of Education, and that has to do with the development, the writing, and the assessment of the student learning objectives. And our teachers have had significant struggles with that. What concerns me about that is in West Warwick, we've identified that as an issue when we started, and we provided a significant amount of training to teachers around that, and we still had a lot of difficulty with it. And I shudder to think of what some other districts who didn't see that going in, how they dealt with it. And
let's back up just a minute. I think it's important for us to, I'm not sure that everyone who's watching this would understand that when we are thinking about evaluating teachers and administrators now, we're talking about, most people remember when they were evaluated, or if they know about their teacher's evaluation, that it's because someone came in and sat in the classroom, watched what it is that you're doing, had some kind of a checklist, and gave you a grade, if you will. And now we are finding ways to incorporate what the teacher's impact is on student learning. And so there are two ways that the Department of Education is planning to incorporate that impact into teacher evaluation. One is to where teachers work in an area, a grade or a subject area that they have statewide testing, they're going to factor in a growth number. Let's just call it a number. And for all teachers, we're talking about what Sean's talking about, which is the student learning objective. I keep thinking about it as a pre-test, post-test. So if it was easy, it would be at the beginning of the year, you identify a goal, and at the end of the year, you show some evidence that you've met the goal. It's become a little confusing, right, Sean?
Absolutely. In a vacuum, maybe it could be that easy. In the beginning, you assign a pre-test, and at the end of the year, you give them a post-test, and you can identify student growth. But we don't operate in a vacuum, and we're all operating with many different variables. The students I teach are very different from the students that one of my colleagues may teach. The fact that we have teachers who leave for maternity leave during the course of a school year, and they have large gaps of time when they're not in the building, and they're still going to be held accountable to the student learning objective. We don't know how that's going to work yet. What we do know is that the student learning objective does have the potential to take a teacher from highly effective to ineffective. And something that has that much weight needs to be designed and implemented in a much more careful way than it has been dictated by the Department of Education. And what I'm hearing from teachers now, because a lot of our teachers have gone to the recent SLO trainings, the feedback that I'm hearing from teachers is there seems to be a general feeling at the Department of Ed that too many people fared too well with the student learning objectives, so now they're going to condense the rubric and reduce the number of opportunities that existed to become a highly effective teacher. So what they're seeing in this so-called collaborative effort is when we work together and we identify a way that we think makes sense and we're in agreement and we implement it, but too many people seem to fare too well, then the rules get changed. It's really creating a lot of anxiety.
Sure. I mean, one of the other things is that I think it's important for people to know that that portion of the evaluation system is the same for every district in Rhode Island. So our collaborative work on designing the bulk of the innovation model then has to pull in the Department of Education's student learning objective piece or the student learning piece, as does the Coventry model, as does the Rhode Island model. I dare say that the good news is that you folks all have a voice, and it seems to me that you're all in agreement on what some of the challenges, like the student learning objective piece, is. We've got the ability, Frank, to collect data on how that's going. We already asked our districts to tell us some stories about how did it work out. You know, we're hearing that the idea of setting a student learning objective and gathering some evidence to show that your students did make progress is a really good one, and teachers embrace that, much more so than the test score.
Yes.
And that we have the opportunity to give information to the Department of Education about how it's going. I know that they've already made some changes. I'm hoping that the changes are for the good, and my understanding is that we'll continue to provide that information to the Department of Education through our office.
I hope so. One of the frustrations that I've had throughout this process is that this was a monumental shift from where we were 2 years ago. And the amount of work and the quality of the work that we've undertaken as a collaborative has been phenomenal. We've been nationally recognized by a number of organizations, including the Department of Ed, about the work we're doing. But throughout this process, in RIDE, instead of embracing what we're doing and celebrating what we're doing, encouraging us, just seemed to put roadblock after roadblock. And if you know, as we discussed last time, we were ahead of even RIDE's implementation of the model while they were doing it at the same time. And it just seems that, you know, here was something that was great happening, and RIDE was doing very similar work, and we were working in parallel tracks. But I don't believe that, you know, we get the encouragement that we should have gotten, or even the recognition about the quality of the work that was going on throughout this process, or even some of the clarifications weren't timely, and some of the things that we identified, such as pace and a lot of the other things that have been discussed so far today, we brought those with legitimate research and data to point out why these were problematic, and they really weren't embraced publicly. But a lot of times in reflection, we saw that many of the things that RIDE ended up adopting were in fact the things that we had included in our model. And you know, we had other districts amongst the RIFT that were willing to join and looking to become part of our consortium, and they weren't even allowed to, and that was really problematic and troublesome for me. That, you know, here we have a model that we've proven time and again at every interval that we could be measured throughout this process, that we were well ahead of RIDE and doing a fantastic job and being recognized about the value and the quality of the work, and yet it wasn't good enough to allow some of our other colleagues to join onto the work at that time. Hopefully now that it's been fully approved, we'll get that opportunity if some of our other colleagues want to work with us and share that training. We'll be allowed to do that, but it just, I never felt that RIDE really gave us the recognition or value the work that was done. And it's unfortunate, you know, not for our organization or for the districts, but just for the teachers and the people that put the work into it and that were buying into it and putting all of their hours and blood, sweat, and tears into implementing this and really being faithful to this system and really trying to make it a success, didn't get the validation that they should have.
But I did hear a little note of hope in there. I did hear that, number one, I do think that the consortium as a whole should take some credit that there have been we made a lot of changes to our model. Yes. So in our model, you know, we heard some of the same problems with what we were proposing that I'm sure that the administration and the Department of Education heard from other districts about how overwhelming it was and how fast the pace was and so forth. We made changes. I know that the Department of Education made significant changes to the Rhode Island model, and I think you're right in identifying the fact that some of the feedback from our districts helped. And I did hear that little hopeful note that maybe the other districts who might like to participate in our network will be able to do so.
We can only hope.
We can only hope.
Well, I also think on that note is basically too that we went through the implementation in a very different manner, and healthy competition is always good. Yeah. But when it stops the process and stops the work, then that's obviously not a healthy competition. And I think at the beginning, it was really about getting a merger so we'd have one state, one evaluation. And I know that I was personally, in my vote, my one vote, I was against that. And I wasn't against it because RIDE was doing their model and we had the innovation model. I was against it because we had spent so much time. This is going on the 3.5 years really in the making. And up until that point, it was 2 years in, and I wanted to really have an opportunity to put it to the test because we became the experts. Mm-hmm. You know, if I ever knew that I would ever know this much about teacher evaluation and actually go to Washington with you and be able to defend it and discuss it, it's not that I didn't know it, but and we are academic leaders as well, but We really got into it, and we really took it really serious. It's not going away. We know it's not going away. We want to be evaluated, and I think that that's the general feeling, that maybe teachers don't want to be evaluated, but we do want to be evaluated. But as Sean said, we need to have it fair and equitable. We don't want to see people gotcha, whatever. We want to have the right professional evaluation. And so that's why I wanted to see our model tested and see how it went, and we discussed every single kink that was in it. And I felt that we should have a voice.
You know, I think that probably, and I want Ken to weigh in on that, but one of the things that impressed me throughout this whole piece, and I do think that building on, you know, that last piece of the little hopeful note that you sounded, we are working on a joint agreement around the cyclical process. I think, you know, the commissioner and I have talked about the fact that, you know, maybe merger wasn't the right way to go, but the recognition that we now have a state system that allows for, and Sean, you were during the design team deliberations, you always pushed for this, that we have a state system that has multiple options for districts to choose, and you've each mentioned, you know, the slight differences. We're a great local control state that we have. So hopefully, one of the things that I saw as we went down this road for the last 2 years, you folks as superintendents and union presidents have been united in what you just said, the desire to move forward with this, to figure out how you'd stand together around the challenges and around implementation. And so I think I agree. It's good that we went forward to try out the system that we have. Yes. I think we've informed each other. We've learned from the Rhode Island model, and they hopefully have learned from us. And I think the best thing going forward is to think about this as a system with you know, options for all. Ken, what were you going to say?
I just think that we can't lose sight that there is a fundamental difference between the two systems, and not in the procedural aspects, but in the developmental aspects. And the fundamental difference was when we were in the developmental stage, and union presidents and superintendents and all of our teacher leaders were there in the room developing the model, we have an integral knowledge and appreciation, and have brainstormed all of these pieces together. So when we develop our evaluation committees back in our districts, and we develop those teams, there isn't anything that Sean and myself and that committee can't answer to an administrator or a teacher that we've troubled with this. When I look at the other districts in the state that I hear from so often that are not part of the innovative districts, and they have a top-down model. They're implementing a top-down model. They haven't been in the stage of development of the model. So therefore, you don't have that collaboration. You don't have those teacher evaluation committees set up. You don't have those pieces set up. That's to come in those districts. And coming in many of them. And coming, and hopefully coming. But again, the committee that we serve on to not merge, but look at what are the best parts of both models, and can we pull from each one to create this model, is very beneficial to all of us, administrators and teachers within the state. And it is going to enhance teaching and learning in the state. There is no question about that. So I think we're winding up the place where we started our discussion in the other session. We said that we were going to come back to talk a little bit about the challenges, because we all felt that we just started that and we didn't really get to finish it. But Ken, you're bringing us right back to the fact that the labor management collaboration in this work is really key to successful implementation. Anybody want to add to that, or
well, I think
have a final word?
With a number of the other initiatives, the implementing the Common Core System standards and all of those things, we've created a framework in all of these districts to and a blueprint to move forward with those and any other kind of initiative that comes down the pike. And I think that is really the true value in this whole exercise, and that will take us a long way going forward to a reform of our districts and the other districts in Rhode Island.
I think you're right.
That's a good point.
I think that's a great point. I think maybe it helps us get to that resource point that you talked about. It's not that we don't need resources, but I think that the decision to move forward and to approach many of the other things that we have to deal with in the same spirit and the manner in which we approach this will serve us all well. Anybody else want to add? I think Ken has brought us to a really good place here. So we started by talking about benefits. We acknowledged the work that your districts, and you are here actually representing the 6 districts who are a part of this consortium. I think we've mentioned that there is work going on across Rhode Island, and I know that there are other examples of districts that are trying and working together as hard as we've been working on this. But the common thread across all of your districts is that you have stood together over the last couple of years. You appear to be continuing in that commitment to do so. And I know that your colleagues in the other innovation districts want to do the same. I agree with Frank that there are things that we've done and learned. You say that we're experts. I'm feeling like we are pretty expert, that we could share with others. And hopefully we will move forward with every district in the state valuing the work that goes on and learning that collaboration is probably one of the most fundamental things that we could think about in terms of success. And so I thank you all for being with us today. And for the last session, it was a great discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Feedback is something you found beneficial, whereas that final effectiveness rating, the highly effective, the HE or the E, is something that's just causing some concern.
It absolutely is. Absolutely, there were many teachers in my building who were devastated that they weren't highly effective teachers. Their feeling is, I've been teaching this many years. What do you mean I'm not effective? Their interpretation of effective is that they're just adequate.
Right.
And there's a whole conversation that has to be had around that, so the teachers realize that that effective is okay. You're a really good teacher if you're an effective teacher.
And do you think that if we could put that aside, just the label, do you hear, or did you hear from your colleagues, that the conversation that you talked about where you got some feedback, do you think that was something that they recognized as helpful, or was it clouded by that effectiveness
It was
rating?
clouded by the rating.
It was. It was. Well, hopefully as we go forward and we spend more time with the conversation, that will be something that would be more apparent to teachers, that we're really in it about the conversation.
Right.
So you've just identified something that's both a benefit and a challenge. Any other challenges that you would mention?
Again, the rubric was definitely a challenge, and I had an opportunity to do a lot of in-service over the summer with our teachers to help them, and still at this point I go back and forth. Not having evaluated anybody, I'm not as intimate with it as those of you who have. So I have ideas. I find I'm tougher than the evaluators are.
Interesting.
And I have noticed that other teachers are as well. Whenever we get together, like at West Valley and do something, I find myself thinking, oh, I thought that was developing. So
that happened a lot in my district too. I know, me personally as well, to jump off that, I would, I think I would look at myself as an effective teacher and under certain categories where my evaluator said, oh no, you really were highly effective.
Right.
And that's, it was an eye-opening experience to me as well. So to jump on that.
Yeah.
And I think we are hard on ourselves.
We are.
But the language of the rubric, what Patrick was talking about earlier, if we can get folks, as you suggested, through professional development, through ongoing conversation, to get familiar with the rubric, hopefully that will help. And I like to think that over time, we'll be able to focus on those things. Richard was just talking about, I think Karen was talking about the difference of not being an evaluator, but Maureen, you're sitting in that seat as an evaluator. You used the system this year. You conducted evaluations. What did you find beneficial? What worked for you?
The beneficial part was it was the conference, the pre and post, talking to the teachers and getting a feel of everything. I have to agree, and I've been teaching for 26 years. I was a teacher and now I'm principal. And a lot of those teachers I worked with, I was a phys ed teacher. So it was very difficult. They were very upset if they didn't get highly effective in an area or something. But you had to look at you had to look at the rubric and you had to do it. But the other thing is, it's the way you talk. I have a good communication with my teachers. And I'm like, I know you are, but we didn't see it here. It's just the camaraderie you have with your teachers. I wasn't one of those that took it where I got you where there's others that might be like that. And we've seen it when we went to West Valley and just different comments and stuff. And I'm like, just, you know, you just kind of, you got to make a judgment call. So it was nice that way. And we talked, we got along, and we shared back and forth. Well, what do you think? How could I be highly effective in this? And it was nice. That part was really good. Them seeing the dialogue when I gave them, and I will say, I wasn't supposed to, but I did, because I didn't want it to be a one-way street. When I did their dialogue, I did let them see what I wrote down. Good. So they could say, or even if I missed something, like, what did I miss? It's very hard to write as you're there for an hour. So I let them see the dialogue, and when they saw it in front of them and they read it over, they even, some of my tenured teachers even said, I can't believe I said that. I can't believe I said this. I can't believe I said this. So that was really good. So in that aspect, I did enjoy that part of it.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's funny, you mentioned about showing the evidence. One of the interesting things I found in sitting in as many trainings that I sat in, that we really do encourage you to do exactly what you just said, to show the evidence. But the note-taking, if you will, or the scripting during a lesson, when we had so many standards and indicators, was really overwhelming for people. So hopefully, this, now that we've streamlined the model a bit, that will allow you to really focus on what we consider to be the big ideas, the high leverage points. One of the things I'm wondering about before we conclude this is the 6 districts that are engaged in the Innovation Consortium pledged to do this collaboratively. All of the districts in Rhode Island have to adopt a Department of Education approved evaluation system. Everyone went through to some degree the gradual implementation year during 2011-2012, and everyone is facing full implementation next September. I'm hearing that this collaborative way of doing this with the labor and management, superintendents and union presidents, administration and teachers working together on it is helpful. And I'm wondering if anybody wants to comment on that, because you've all been involved, either from your perspective as a teacher, a union leader, administrator. I'm wondering if you, and you know, we all know people in other districts that may not have been following this path.
I can say, you know, it's tough because it is helpful, it's collaboration, but being in the big elementary school, I was by myself. I did 51 teachers. Wow. And I was under the gun to get everything done in informals. That's a lot. So I kind of, you know, that's hard to do. When you have 51 people to do, and then now we're going to add in the support service, that's another 10 people I'm going to have to do. It's a tough road in that aspect.
So that's a very challenging thing for a principal to have to do. I'm sure you felt that in a big middle school.
It's difficult. I think it's important having all the different stakeholders involved in the decision-making process. The union, the administrators, the teachers and faculty. We found that involving everyone and talking about potential roadblocks, anything that would make the process more challenging, or ways of making the process more streamlined, just including all of those constituents in Woonsocket has been a really good thing. It's been a really good relationship that we've had, and we're going to continue this summer as our evaluation board continues to meet, which is comprised of, as I said, union members, teachers, administrators, central office staff. So it's been nice collaborating with all of those different parties.
It's interesting, West Warwick, and I think Cranston as well, to Maureen's point. So the collaboration that Patrick is talking about really sets the tone, and I've seen that working across all the districts, and it's going to live, I think, in that district evaluation committee. Interestingly, though, one of the things that Maureen talked about in terms of being a challenge, having to be alone in a building and do all those evaluations, it's interesting to see that in a place like Cranston and really in West Warwick, you have embraced this idea of having peer evaluators assist the principal in collecting evidence. I'm just quickly, if we could get you, Richard, to talk about how you felt serving as a peer evaluator, a teacher a supervisor, but a teacher, working to collect evidence with an administrator, and then maybe ask Molly, did you get an opportunity to be evaluated or by a peer? So you did both as well. So Richard, talk a little bit about that.
Initially, it was a little awkward, because we're on the same playing field to some extent. But once you get going and once you get into it and you really look at the rubrics and you look at the evidence, I think that the people really appreciated being able to have a conversation with not just their administrator, and we were able to have a lot of professional conversations geared towards improvement or, it was a true collaboration. I thought I learned from the people that I evaluated as well. So it was an interesting piece being on both ends of it.
Sure.
For sure.
And I'm wondering, Maureen, as we move, hopefully, in your district to rely on peers to be a part of the process, that might take some of the burden off. You bear the final responsibility, we certainly know that, but a number of the districts are beginning to think about how, so for example, Karen or Molly, being trained as evaluators, what role that you will play in helping out with the conversation, with the evidence collection, and working with principals to do the final determination. Have you had the opportunity, Molly, to serve as an evaluator?
I was an evaluator this year, and I did go through the pilot process. And so what I really found out this year, and if you know anything about West Warwick, we really truly are a family, and we all will help each other. No one wanted to see anyone fail. So whether you were an evaluator or evaluatee, or you went through your evaluation process, we all helped out each other. And there was a true conversation around this evaluation process this year. You just did yours. Oh, could you help me with yours? And that's what I love most about working in West Warwick, is we really all have a goal. We will help everyone pass, be effective. And whether you were evaluator, evaluated administrator, department head, we all jumped on this bandwagon together and said we're all going to move forward together.
I think Cranston was very much like that as well, and I think the support that our administration gave teachers in giving us opportunities for professional development was huge. There were substitute administrators that were brought in to cover buildings during the day so that evaluators could be freed up to do the evaluation, have some time to scribe and meet with people, not have to put all their other responsibilities on hold. The support that we felt as teachers from our district was huge.
And I think I want to leave it at that, because I think we've recognized that there are challenges. This has not been an easy year. I appreciate the work that you've all done in terms of helping us figure this system out, because that's actually what I feel we're doing this year. I do think that our work together as a consortium has been helpful. You described it well, Patrick. We've tried to do that in every district and across the districts. As I look around the state and other states, this seems to be a value add, if you will, to not use that term in this context, but I think it really is a value add to have the teachers and the administrators, the union leaders, the central office staff deciding that this is an area of common interest. And we've still got a lot of work to do, but I think we're farther along in our work because of the kind of work that you guys have been doing. So I really appreciate it. And anybody want to add anything else? Do you think we're all set? Thanks a lot.
My name is Kim Mercer. I'm the Deputy Superintendent of the Pawtucket School Department. And one of the things that I think is the most beneficial of this evaluation system is that it allows teachers to grow as teachers. There are very, very clear expectations, and based on the rubric, they can see where they're at and where they need to grow. And the conversations that we are having with teachers are really rich and meaningful, and I think that it allows teachers to get to their fullest potential.
My name is John Hydemenis Jr. I'm the principal of the Jacqueline and Walsh School for the Performing and Visual Arts in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. What I'm finding very beneficial of this new teacher evaluation system is that the teachers are really looking at their lessons in a different way. They're seeing a lot of methodologies that they're looking at while they're constructing their lesson plans, and they're seeing the elements one by one. A lot of them are telling me that they wish that they had the time to kind of develop these lessons on a regular basis. And because they're looking at this more as the evaluative tool, but a lot of them are looking at the elements that are in this evaluation system and the benefits that helps them to develop their own lessons for their classrooms. Well, I think we've been really looking to reduce the number of elements that are in the model, and looking at the rubrics and some of the redundancies that have occurred in those rubrics that we're seeing in the new model being reduced. And we've seen the collapsing of standard 4 and 5 into just one standard. So I think it's going to provide us the opportunity to do a much more effective job of grading teachers because of the reduced number of elements. From an educational standpoint, the conversations that we're having with teachers is so much more intense and just more collaborative when we're discussing evaluations and the process and what we're looking for and what they're trying to convey to us when they're generating their lessons and what we're observing in the classroom.
John Santangelo, I teach at Weston Hills Middle School in Cranston, Rhode Island, and I'm the Vice President of the Cranston Teachers Alliance. And I think the benefit of the innovation model has been it is for teachers by teachers. So teachers actually sat down and have had their hand in the design of this model, and we've continued to have our hand in the design of the model as time progresses, and some of the changes that are being made are actually being made by teachers, so it makes it very beneficial for everyone.
The only way that this would be successful is with clear collaboration between the union and the administration. If this wasn't collaborated upon, this would not ever be implemented to its fullest ability to impact the greatest in the classroom. The collaboration has led to people working together, to them developing this program together, creating a tool that has allowed them to better the evaluation system in the entire state.
As Vice President of my local, I can see where the implementation and the collaboration between the administration and the teachers union has been very, very successful here. It's important to have so that you have full buy-in by everyone involved, all parties that are involved in this. And again, it's always about bettering our practice and bettering our profession. And the best way to do that, of course, is to make sure that everyone's always working hand in hand in order to have a successful program. And I believe that we've been able to accomplish that through our collaboration here.
Hi, I'm Ron Beaupre. I'm president of the Pawtucket Teachers Alliance. I find that after talking to my members, the biggest benefit to the innovation evaluation model is the reflection on practice. All of my members have said that it is the most reflective process we've ever had. They're actually looking at their daily lessons, and they're seeing that after one evaluation how they now are improving their practice on a daily basis. The importance of labor management collaboration to the process of evaluation is that with labor and management together on board, working hard to understand evaluation and understand the need for support for our educators, it makes that process much more valuable to all involved. Administrators understand that teachers need support, and teachers understand that administrators aren't there to get them.
My name is Cindy Giroux. I'm the principal of the Captain Hunt Early Learning Center in Central Falls, Rhode Island. I think the most single benefit of the innovation model has been the ability for teachers and administrators to have conversations around instruction and professional development. And those conversations are now comprehensive and focused. So we're making changes to instruction and student outcomes.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of Labor Vision. We appreciate your input and encourage your comments. Labor Vision can be seen 3 times each week: Tuesdays at 7 p.m., Thursdays at 8 p.m., and Saturdays at 5 p.m.